Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2015 Professor Messer A-Plus Study Group. Can't believe it's August of 2015. I'm your host, James Messer, and during this next hour, I'm going to be giving you some questions and you'll be answering them. This is all online and live. You'll be able to interactively follow along, answer the question, and see how you do versus everyone else who's watching. If you're watching this in the replay, unfortunately, we won't have that functionality available to you, but you can still follow along and see if you know the answers that are there. It'd be interesting to see what those might be. There is a lot going on during the second part of the hour. I will have a phone number available for you to call in. So we'll just open up the phone lines, and it's an open phone line. Any question that you have will do. If you, of course, want to watch what we're doing live, you can follow me on my YouTube page, or if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to participate and be in the chat room so I can see people typing in and answer questions from there, you can go to professormesser.com/live. And another reminder, if you're planning to take your exam, don't forget to get your discounted vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. This is also something you can use for continuing education credits. So if you are watching this, somewhere in this hour, I will give you a CEU code that you will send to me, and I can send you back a digital certificate that indeed says this you will be you will get 1 hour of the CEU credit. So at least that's something you can get for watching this, along with an entertaining hour of knowledge and information. This is also something I'm able to do because, of course, you're watching all of my videos online, and all of my videos are available to watch online for free. Some folks like to take them with them, take them offline, and you certainly can do that. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/downloadable-A+. This not only includes the videos with closed captioning, it also includes MP3 audio. It also includes all my slides in PDF format, and of course, transcripts and closed captions are included with those, not only online and but offline. Well, let's make sure that you are able to get in and answer questions. You do that by using the service I use called Socrative. So go to Socrative.com, click the student login button, and here's the important part, because if you don't type this in properly, you'll be in a room where nothing is happening. It'll say waiting for teacher because you're in the wrong room. So make sure you type the room name in properly of Professor Messer. So PROFESSORMESSER. You can do that by popping open a new browser window, or if you're on a mobile device, you can pop your mobile device up and go to the App Store for your mobile device and download the Socrative student app, and then you can follow along on your mobile device as well and participate. And if you are in the Socrative room and you're typing things in, you will see a question, and this is the question that you will see, which is, how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? So this will be our test run. We'll see how you do with understanding if you're able to use this or not, because once you get in and use it, you'll see things like this. You'll see a screen that you can simply click on, and on my side, I see everything rolled up. So we can see that of the 95 or so people who have already gone into Socrative, we've got an interesting distribution. Usually we have less than 3 months is our largest number. And again, it is this month as well. You can see there are 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, more than 9 months, or I already have my A+ certification. 10% of you already have your A+. So you're here just to see if you can remember some of those things. And of course, you get a CEU credit for attending as well. So that might be good. If it does show you that you are waiting for teacher, then you're in the wrong room. Refresh your screen, log out, log back in, make sure you use the proper room name, or you won't be able to do any of that. So that will be our run through today. We'll be able to go through and answer some of these questions. So let's jump into it. Let's try answering some of these questions that I put together. I put together some more difficult questions than how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? So let's make sure that we know what the answers are. So before we get into that piece, while you're logging into Socrative, remember the 22801 and the 22802, 2 separate exams are required for you to pass to get your A+ certification. Make sure that when you're looking at this, that you understand what topics will be covered in each exam. On the 801, we have PC hardware, networking, laptops, printers, and operational procedures. And on the 802, we have operating systems, security, mobile devices, and troubleshooting. You might get as many as 90 questions when you sit down. It might be less than that, but it will never be more than 90 questions. The passing score for the 801 is a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. and we think that every question is worth a different number of points, so it's very hard to come up with a percentage. In fact, it's impossible to come up with a percentage complete on that. You have to just make sure you do as well as you can to get your total number of points above 675. And on the 802, you want to get a passing score of 700. One of the popular questions right now is that CompTIA stated earlier in the year that they plan on phasing out the 800 series and phasing in the 900 series by the end of this calendar year. Well, this has not happened yet. They haven't made any formal announcements of this. They have indicated in other forums online and at some of their shows that they do, some of their conferences, they're planning to release this by the end of the year. And as CompTIA tends to do, they have said that they will have a very generous overlay so that you will be able to take the 800 series exam well into 2016. So if you're studying now for the 800 series, keep studying. We don't know exactly when the 900 series will be released, but even when it's released, you'll probably still have 6 to 9 months after that you can still take them. So nothing you're doing now is a waste of time. Whether you take the 800 series exam or whether you take the 900 series exams, you get exactly the same certification. So there's no benefit really for waiting for the new one. You might as well get that certification as quickly as you can. So let's answer some questions now about the A+ and see how you're doing with these. Our first question of the day is about memory. What type of memory can identify errors and correct them? Don't answer in the chat room. No answering in the chat room. No Googling. You have to know this off the top of your head. Make your best guess. Go to the Socrative login. Go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the Professor Messer room. The options that I have for you as the type of memory that's available and that can identify errors and correct them is buffered. Turn on my little view here. Buffered, ECC, RAID, SDRAM, and EEPROM. So you've got a few options there to do that. So you click your answer, lock it in. Let's see how you do with identifying errors and correcting them. Which one could it possibly be? Hopefully you've got an idea of which one that be. I think we're starting off on a relatively easy question for many of you, which is good, I think. So go into Socrative, make sure you student log in and answer that question. So let's see how we did with this one. You can see that 83% of you would have answered ECC. If I had to take a guess at what this might be, ECC is probably the right one. But you've got others here. Buffered, 4% said buffered, 5% said RAID, 9% said SDRAM, and 8% said EEPROM. So which one could it possibly be then? Which one of these? It's pretty important to have memory like this that's able to check itself. Memory is not something that is completely 100% accurate all the time. There's many things that can cause memory to cause a problem. There could be a voltage spike. There could be quite literally rays from the sun that can disrupt computing equipment here on Earth. So one of those is an important thing. You'll probably see things like parity memory that will add an additional bit to the memory so that it can check the parity of that memory coming through. This will try to detect errors that coming through, but it can't correct any errors. This memory is not designed to correct anything. And of course, my question was very specifically asking you for the type of memory that can identify errors and correct the errors. Well, that type of memory, of course, as you've probably already seen by the number of people, is ECC. So it's detecting the correct errors and correcting the errors on the fly. Your system, your motherboard, has to be designed to use this ECC memory. You can't just take the memory out of your home computer, put in ECC, and expect it to work. It has to be designed to use this. And usually see it on servers or large computing systems that need that extra type of redundancy built in. So how does this work? This is a question I get a lot, which is, how does parity allow me to do this? So let's go through the process of figuring out how this memory works. So I've got some things for you to look at here. We're looking at, I've got 3 bytes on the screen. We'll look at this one row at a time. So this top row is a byte. It's 8 bits that make up a byte, and you can see the 8 bits here, bit 1 through bit 8. And you can see this first byte is 11100111. Well, the way this usually works is through something called even parity, which means the parity bit is going to make all the ones be even. So let's look at the number of ones that we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, the number of ones that we have, 6 ones, 6 is an even number already. So we don't need a number 1 to add more to make that even. We just put a 0 in, and that maintains that number of even. So our parity bit is going to be 0. This means that if we were to lose any of these other bits, let's see this bit 2 turned into a 0, our parity bit would not match. It would say, wait a second, this is not even. Somewhere we had a problem. We now need to correct this, and that's what the ECC memory does. Let's do another one. Let's do the next bit down. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0. Well, the number of ones in this case only have one of them, and 1 is an odd number. To make this even parity, I'm going to need to add a 1 into the parity bit. That's it. That's how complicated parity is. It's really not complicated at all. It's very simple. It's ones and zeros. You have to have an even number. Your parity bit is being used to make everything an even number. So let's do another one. This last one, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. It's too many zeros at the end. Number ones I have 1, 2, 3 ones. That's an odd number. To make it even, I need to add a parity bit. So hopefully that's given you an idea of how that might work. You probably won't get into this level of detail on the A+ exam about parity, but one of the nice things about this is that you'll certainly be asked questions about ECC, parity memory, RAID. All of these technologies use parity to some degree. So if we were going to look at these, are these correct or not correct? So I've got a few to try. So let's go through this first one. We've got 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, and a parity bit of 1. Is that a correct amount of memory? If our ECC or parity memory was looking at this byte, would that be correct based on the parity bit? And the answer is yes, because the number of ones, including the parity bit, is an even number. Let's do the same thing with the next one. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, and a parity bit of 0. So is our parity bit there and all of the rest of the byte, is that correct? Well, looking at the number ones, we have an odd number of ones. So something's not correct. That byte is not correct. And something like parity memory would show an error. ECC memory would then go in the process of recovering where the actual problem is occurring with that particular memory. And let's do the third one. Well, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0 with a parity bit of 1. And again, let's count these. 1, 2, 3, 4 ones. That's an even number. And that's absolutely correct. So hopefully that's given you an idea how parity works. Really not so difficult in that. Let's try not answering those in the chat room for everybody trying to figure those out as well. One of the things I like about the parity is it's such a simple process and it's so effective. So whenever you're looking at questions about this, that's where it's getting it from. Now, the ones we looked at, ECC was obviously the correct answer. Buffered memory is one that provides an extra set of buffering in the memory. It has really nothing to do with ECC or error correction or error detection, although you can have ECC memory, which is also buffered. So those things are mutually exclusive. RAID, of course, is used in hard drives. This is not about memory, so that would not be the correct answer in this case, although there are types of RAID that use parity. But in this case, we asked a very specific question about memory, and RAID is not memory. That's for storage. SD-RAM is about the memory in our system. It describes memory, effectively, a type of memory. It's not describing the process that the memory uses or the qualification associated with the SD-RAM that would allow us to check the memory. That qualification is the ECC. And EEPROM, an electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. It's like a flash drive. And in this case, flash drives, that's not the technology we're talking about that can identify errors and correct them. So hopefully that's given you some insight into some of the things that you can do with memory. One of the things that I get questions about all the time, though, is not just about memory, but printers. We love printers, don't we? So, of course, I have a printer question for you. Got to put a printer question in. I think I might even have more than one printer question this week. I'm trying to remember back. What did I do this week? This question, of course, no answering in the chat room, no Googling, is which of these would be a disadvantage of inkjet printers? If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com, the student login, go to the Professor Messer room name, make sure you type it correctly, or you'll just be sitting there waiting for teacher because you're in the wrong room. It's like going to the wrong room at school. Where is everybody? Well, you're in the wrong room. Make sure you type it in properly. And the possible answers we have, the disadvantage of inkjet printers is its loud operation, its low resolution output, that it clogs easily, or that it requires chemically coated paper. One of these would be a disadvantage of inkjet printers. Certainly on your 800 series exams, you need to know about printers. You need to understand the different technologies of printers, not just inkjet, but things like laser printing and impact printing or dot matrix printing are good examples of that. And we, of course, have to be able to understand how to troubleshoot these printers. I think that's where we have our biggest challenges with trying to work with printers, because we don't often have a laser printer at home that we can open up and have a look. If you're already working in an enterprise environment, you may have a number of laser printers you can reference, but if you're trying to get your A+, you may not even be in that position yet. So hopefully this will give you some insight into these technologies and how they might work with these impact laser, and in this case, inkjet printers. So let's see how we did with our inkjet printers. We do have a kind of a mix this time, and we have been known to choose the answer sometimes and go with this. This is and not have the right one, but in this case, 73% said it clogs easily, but we have double digits. 15% said it has a low resolution output, and 11% said it's a loud operation. It seems to be a good mix, although there's clearly one large majority that says it clogs easily. Well, let's have a look at inkjet printers. Inkjet printers might also be called ink dispersion printers as well. These are printers that are relatively inexpensive to use, to create, to manufacture. They are relatively inexpensive to operate, although one could argue that the cost of ink is the thing that's really drives up the cost of inkjet, and that's probably a pretty good thing to see on the inkjet printers. It's something that the industry deals with in many different ways. There's a number of inkjet printers out there that are trying to buck that trend by giving you different ways to use ink that are much more economical. So we may be able to see the whole industry do that. Now, one of the things that I work with these printers is, and one of the things I like about inkjet printers is that they're quiet. I don't have to worry about them making a lot of noise on the printers. They are that you can really go anywhere. They can go in a quiet office, they can go in a library, and they can print and you barely hear. In fact, it's the clacking of the printer working that tends to be louder than the actual printing process. They give you nice high resolution and nice color perspective. It's a very, very, very detailed printing method, provides you with a lot of different capabilities, but the ink itself is expensive. As we mentioned, it's usually a proprietary ink cartridge, so you have to buy the ink cartridges from the manufacturer. They've got a number of ways to do that. This type of ink generally fades over time as well. It's not considered to be a permanent printing process, and it clogs easily. That's kind of our answer, isn't it? If we look at the different ways about inkjet, it's not loud, so that wouldn't be a disadvantage. It gives you some nice high-resolution output, so that's not a disadvantage. It does not require chemically coated paper. Anybody care to take a guess on what does require chemically coated paper? I'm going to wait for the chat room to answer that one. And it does clog easily. Most inkjet printers are set up so that they will every day clean their printer output so that the different print heads are not clogging with that. And in fact, the chat room, you got it absolutely right. Thermal printers are the ones that require chemically coated paper. Well done with that one. So you really answered 2 printer questions in one. How's that for a bargain? Let's do another one. Let's not do printer questions though. Let's shift gears. I think we should get away from printer questions. The question I have is, and this is more of a networking question, which of these would you enable in a firewall to allow remote desktop? There are a number of people in the chat room that are saying these questions have been easy. So I've given you a hard one. And the reason I've given you a hard one is you really have to know the answer to this one. This one's very difficult because of the answers I gave you. This is not unusual to see on an exam, by the way, is the answers are very, very similar to each other. It's hard to pick one out and say that it's definitely not that one. You have to know what you would enable in a firewall to allow remote desktop. Would it be UDP 3389, TCP 3989, UDP 3999, TCP 3389, TCP 3339, or UDP 3989? Okay, now you got to figure that out, which one of those it might be. So go through that list, have a look at it, go to your Socrative.com. No going into Google and asking the Google machine. No asking Cortana or Google Now or Siri. Don't be doing that. You need to, and in the chat room, people are saying, yeah, we need to know these ports. We need to figure out these port numbers and see if we can get these to work properly, because port numbers are an important thing. You're going to run into these all the time. This is something that you have to worry about, not just on a firewall that might be on the network, but every machine now has a personal firewall. And occasionally you can't set up the personal firewall to look at a particular application name. You have to open it up by port number. And so you do need to know what these different port numbers are. So what would we enable in a firewall to be able to know how to do this? Let's see if we can get these going. So how do we do? Let's click a button, and we're kind of caught between two of them, aren't we? We have one that's clearly the majority. It's 62%, but we've got UDP 3389, 17% said UDP 3389. We've got double digits on TCP 3989, and all of the rest are with a single digit associated with those. Let's talk about remote desktop, or more specifically, the remote desktop protocol. It indeed uses a port number of TCP 3389. This is a technology that allows you to share a desktop. So you can be sitting at your desk and be able to see and interact with a desktop that might be on another machine somewhere else. This is something that's not only used for troubleshooting or help desk type purposes, but it's a technology that's also used for things like terminal services, where you can deploy certain technologies out to many people from a central server. And all they have to do is see this remote desktop screen. They may not even know on their machine that it's a remote desktop. All they see is a normal application running. Some very interesting technologies in being able to do that. All of the port numbers, by the way, for the exam, everything you need to know is listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. If you do not have the CompTIA exam objectives, then you are doing yourself a disfavor. You need to go to the A+ website or the CompTIA website, go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, or go to professormesser.com/objectives. I've already got a link there for you. And that takes you right to the CompTIA site where you can download the latest objectives. It tells you everything you need to know, including each one of the port numbers you need. There are a number of people that will list out hundreds of port numbers and think that they need to memorize them. No, it's a small number for the A+ that you need to know. So it's very useful to have that there. There may be other technologies that use remote desktop in the chat room. Other people talking about TeamViewer. They're talking about VNC. And some of those technologies may indeed use UDP or TCP or both. In fact, there are many ways to set up these technologies to operate, but VNC and TeamViewer are not using the remote desktop protocol. And in our particular case, we were talking very specifically about the remote desktop protocol. You can get a client for remote desktop for practically any operating system. So if you're running Linux, if you're running Mac OS, if you're running Windows, if you're running mobile devices, there is a remote desktop client so that you can be on your Mac OS device and remote desktop into a Windows server. Simple to do, it's easy, it works great. That is all important when you're working with those things. So if you're one of the folks that answered in this 63% TCP 3389, you'd have gotten that one absolutely correct. All of these others may have other applications that use them. I didn't actually look it up. I just switched around all of the numbers and changed the major protocol from TCP to UDP on these. One of the things you can remember, though, is remote desktop is a TCP application. So anything that's UDP, we can get rid of A, we can get rid of C, we can get rid of F. So that leaves you with three others you can choose from. And hopefully from there, you can remember in your mind which one of those port numbers was that and being able to work with it. Well, it's pretty good. I think we got a good number of you knew that one. If you didn't know it, that's okay. You just learned something today. And that's always something good whenever you're learning those. Well, where would you go to list out or know all of these different types of protocols? Well, certainly my videos will show you all of the port numbers you need to know, and I go through all of the details, but I've also made an entire list for you as well, and that's from my course notes. I've taken everything that's in my videos, all of the diagrams, all of the charts, all of the tables, everything that I've created, some text bullets, anything that I think is important for you to know going into the exam, and I've summarized all of that for you in my course notes. This is a very good example of that, knowing what all of those memory settings are and understanding what all those interfaces do, what the RAID pieces are related to, and of course the networking piece. So when you get into understanding network ports and protocols, there's a really good example of network ports and protocols that we could see. In fact, there's the 3389, TCP 3389 is the remote desktop protocol. I have created all these PDFs and they're immediately available for you to download. This is a way when people say, can I contribute? You're providing all of these videos for absolutely free. It's an entire course. I can watch the whole thing. Can I donate to the site? Well, I don't take donations, but I do allow you to purchase these course notes so that you're actually getting something in return. And I think the price is right, $10 each for those. So after you've now watched the videos, you've read a book, maybe you've done some Q&A and you just need something to give you a summary of the things that are important, you may want to look at the course notes. So have a look at that. You can find out more about them at professormesser.com/A+CN, APLUSCN for course notes. And that might help you as well figure out what all those crazy port numbers are. You can see from the list, there were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 port numbers you have to know. So where would you see those and summarize them and get a list of all those pieces? You may want to look at my course notes. And I thank you for that. For those of you that have purchased the course notes, you've mentioned this in the chat room, thank you so much. It's your support that helps keep the website going and helps keep more videos being created all the time. It's incredibly important, and I'm very grateful and thankful for all of you for supporting the site. Let's do another question, shall we? Let's get into more of safety and security of the network. And let's deal specifically with questions regarding grounding. This one is, which of these would be the best reason for grounding your equipment? There's got to be a good reason for grounding your equipment, isn't there? And let's see what our possible answers might be. Would it be to increase your network throughput? Would it be to protect against overclocking failures? Could you prevent electrical shocks, brace against earthquakes and tremors, or does it allow the building to have of larger virtualization servers? So one of these is why you would ground your equipment. So your advantage has got to be there somewhere. If you think you know the answer, don't mention it in the chat room, but you can absolutely go to Socrative.com and go to the student login and carefully type Professor Messer when it asks for your room name. And you'll be able to go through and figure this out yourself. One of the things that when you're working in these environments is that people will ask you all the time during a project for doing things like grounding the equipment. And you're wondering, why am I doing that again? Hopefully you've got an idea of what that might be. And would it be to increase the network throughput, protect against overclocking failures, prevent electrical shocks, brace against earthquakes and tremors, and one of the things allow the building of larger virtualization servers? You know, one of the things is that it prevents electrical shocks. This is incredibly important. And a lot of people in the chat room are going, oh, I knew that already. Well, that's good. That's exactly why you study those exam objectives. If you know the answers to these, then you are very familiar with what the possible answers might be on this. Maybe you're ready to take your exam. If you're just getting into this, however, some of you are trying to figure out the pieces of it. Grounding equipment doesn't really necessarily increase the network throughput. That would not be the proper reason for that. Would not be protecting against overclocking failures or bracing against earthquakes and tremors, but it would absolutely help you for preventing electrical shocks. Grounding incredibly important, not just in a data center, but with anything that you might have that's electrical. and you need to check to see if the equipment that you're using has and the system, the electrical system that's in your wall is one that supports this grounding. All of the modern electrical systems do have a ground associated with the electric piece of it. This is something you often will not just only ground your equipment, but you also ground the racks as well. That way, if there was a short inside of the equipment and that electricity did manage to get onto the rack itself, that would go into the ground, because that is where the electricity is all going to go, to the point of the ground. This is also something that I've seen too often, is people will remove a ground connection either from the device itself or from the racks that are in the data center. And I have no idea why people would want to do that. You want to always maintain a very good ground. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe it's something where they plan to put it in later. That's something that's pretty important. So if we look at the answers, grounding your equipment does not increase network throughput. It does not protect against overclocking failures. It does not brace against earthquakes and tremors, and it does not allow you to build larger virtualization servers. If you're using these, you need to be able to prevent electrical shocks. That is the reason that you have an electrical ground. So let's go through another one. We're doing pretty well on time, so I think we should flip through more of these. The chat room says, I want harder questions. So let me give you a harder question. This is a question specifically relating to RAID. This is one where the question is, which of these would be the best way to recover from a drive failure in a RAID 1 array? So one of these is going to be the best way to recover from a drive failure in a RAID 1 array. So again, no answering in the chat room. I know you want to. I know you have to say it, but don't. We're going to find out, because you've got some options here on what these might be. Would the best way to recover from a failure in RAID 1 to replace all drives in the array? Would it be to identify and replace the faulty drive? Would it be to replace the faulty drive and restore from backup? Would it be to copy the remaining RAID 1 data to a backup array? Or would it be to completely switch over to your backup array? One of these is going to be one of the thing that you might want to be able to work with. And I think there's a lot of different people out there that have worked with these that would be working with and understanding how to use those. There is a lot that deals with RAID on the exam. So you're going to need to understand all of the different RAID types, and you're going to need to know how to troubleshoot when you run into a problem with RAID. So if you think you know the answer, you can go to Socrative.com into the Professor Messer room name. I hear you Googling right now. Do not Google. I can tell when the numbers are kind of slow, like, what should it be? I can tell there's some Googling going on with those pieces. And I think on this one, I may have gotten you on this one. I may have asked a question that's causing some of you to wonder, what would be the best way to recover from a RAID failure? This would be the good way to do it. Let's see how we did with this one. Yes, we could start, as the chat room says, we could start saying the Lord's Prayer. Sometimes that might help. I don't know. I've been through a number of hard drive failures. There has been a lot of spiritual type of I am one with the earth, and please help me, but it doesn't tend to help with the RAID 1. Let's see what we do know about RAID 1, how we did. We are really mixed on this one. We're not sure exactly what we should do with RAID 1. Should we replace all the drives in the array? Should we replace the faulty drive and restore from backup? We have some options here, but which one is it going to be? Only 4% say replace all the drives in the array, and 7% said copy the remaining RAID 1 data to a backup array, and only 1% said really to switch to a backup array. So which one of these would it be then? How would we recover from a RAID 1 failure? Well, let's look at the different RAID types and understand how they operate, and then we can understand how to troubleshoot when something is wrong. So let's have a look at these. So I've created a chart. This is kind of a new chart. So this is not something that's in my existing videos. This is new content just for you. So let's look at the very first one. There is a RAID 0. You need 2 or more disks to have a RAID 0 configuration. RAID 0 is striping. And because it's striping, there's no redundancy built into RAID 0. In fact, you can think of RAID 0 is 0 redundancy. Even though it has R in the name, RAID is the redundant piece. This particular type of RAID for RAID 0, not redundant at all, which means that if you break that if any one of those drives fail, you lose all the data. You can't just replace the drive with RAID 0 and everything comes back. There's no redundancy. So for RAID 0, if you do get a bad drive, you have to replace the drive and then restore everything from backup. Now, our question was specifically about RAID 1. So RAID 1, you have 2 or more disks, again, that are required. RAID 1, again, is mirroring. So if you have 2 drives in RAID 1, you also have 2 other drives that have an exact duplicate of the original 2. There's always an exact duplicate of data running in RAID 1. That is absolutely redundant. So you need to be able to pull out the bad drive, replace it, and because there's redundancy built in, the array rebuilds the new drive that's there so that it can regain the mirroring. Obviously, if you lose 2 drives, you're in trouble. But that's a completely different problem. RAID 5 is one where you have 3 or more disks, but you're providing parity. We talked about parity earlier today. And if we have all drives operational but 1, we're still up and running, which means if we lose a single drive with RAID 5, again, just like RAID 1, we replace the bad drive and it rebuilds all of the information because it has parity information to compare it to and rebuild the drive that is there. So for RAID 10, we've got RAID 1 plus 0. There are 4 or more disks that are required for this because it is one where we're doing both mirroring and we've got parity going along with this as well, striping and mirroring on RAID 1 because it's 1 plus 0. It's mirroring and striping. We can lose all but 1 from each set of mirrors. So we've got mirrored sets of stripes. That's kind of confusing. There's a picture in my video that describes what RAID 1 plus 0 is. But one of the things that's important, this already came up in the chat room, we're okay on RAID 1 and RAID 5 and RAID 10, right? Because we don't need a backup, because you can just replace a drive. And that's an important consideration here. RAID is not backup. With RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 1 plus 0, RAID 10, or RAID anything else, you still always need backup. There always needs to be backup. And here's a good reason why. Let's say you've got a RAID 1 where everything is mirrored. If you lose a drive, you can just replace it. All right, what if I take a document that I've been working on, a big spreadsheet, I accidentally delete everything in the document and then save it? Well, I'm now saving an empty document that used to have all of my payroll information, and that empty document has now been saved in duplicate form. Well, now I've got a duplicate of an empty file. I need a backup. I need to go to backup and get the original. So keep in mind that the redundancy here is just so we can keep things running. Has nothing to do with recovering data over any time frame. You need to make sure that you always have backups. RAID is not backup. RAID is redundant and uptime availability. So that's an important one. We go back and look at the options we had. We would not replace for RAID 1. We would not replace all drives in the array. The whole point of RAID 1 and mirroring is that we can continue to run even if we have a drive failure. So everything, in fact, the end users have no idea there was a drive failure. All you know is this message popped up on your screen, a ticket got opened, there's noise coming from the array, a blinking light over the bad drive. You can see that there's a bad drive. The users have no idea that there's any problem at all. That's the beauty of these RAID configurations. You would identify and replace the faulty drive. If you are the 41% that said identify and replace the faulty drive B, you would be absolutely correct. You would not need to replace the faulty drive and restore from backup because you didn't lose any data. Your drives continue to run. Your mirror is now working on one side of the mirror, so you lost no data, and everything continues to operate just fine. So you would not need to do C. This would not be the correct answer. The correct answer would be B. You would not need to copy the remaining RAID 1 data to a backup array, although you should always have a backup. I think I mentioned that. There is also the option of switching to a backup array. You can certainly do that, but I asked the best way to recover from a drive failure, and switching to a backup array, which may not even have the current data on it, would certainly not be the best way to do that. So there's a good example of some of the questions you might run into RAID, and that's some of the things you could think about whenever you're working with a RAID system. Let's shift gears a bit. I want to shift back to networking. Since all of you were so smart with your port numbers, I have a question about cables. Maybe I can trip you up with this one. The question is, which of these would be the best choice for identifying incorrectly wired network cables? So make sure that you are thinking about this cabling piece, because networking is a big part of the A+ exam. So we need to make sure we understand the pieces of this, and we need to understand what tools we should be using when we're working with this cabling. So which of these would be the best choice for identifying incorrectly wired network cables? Would it be an OTDR? Would it be a loopback plug? Would it be a cable tester, a toner probe, a crimper, or a multimeter? We've got a few options there, don't we? So make sure you go through this list. If you think you know what the answer is, go to Socrative.com. Click the student login, go to the Professor Messer room. Make sure you type it correctly or you won't be in there. I like networking too. Networking is it's where I was working with operating systems very early on in my career, working with servers, understanding network operating systems. And then I saw networks and everything changed for me. Got into the packet level view of the world. And once you know networks, you kind of understand how everything works. It's sort of like being able to read an EKG. And if you understand how the heart is operating, you can even understand how things around the rest of the body are reacting. You can find things that are bad elsewhere in the body by looking at an EKG. And a similar thing with protocol decodes, being able to look at the information and understanding the network. But the question I have here is about cabling. We aren't really at the protocol level. I want to know how to fix a cabling issue. So we have a number of different options to choose from. See if you know the answer. Quit Googling. Folks are Googling again. You go out there, see if you know the answer. OTDRs, loopback plugs, cable testers, toner probes, crimpers, or multimeters. I want to give you another moment or two to answer. Let's see how we did. So we've got OTDR. Nobody answered OTDR. Nobody answered crimper, but we are double digits in loopback plugs, cable testers, and toner probes, and 8% of you, nearly double digits, said multimeter. So now we need to figure this piece out. How are we gonna know which of these is really the best way to identify an incorrectly wired network cable? Well, there's a number of things about this question, by the way, that are very CompTIA-ish. On the exams, they like to ask you what the best choice might be. And I can tell you in here that you have a number of these. You have at least 2 of these that you could use to identify an incorrectly wired network cable. 2 of these things could be used this way, but only one is going to be your best choice. And the real best choice, and in fact, the chat room, people going, oh, you know what, I didn't read that right. That's another important thing about the exam is you must read these questions sometimes 2 and 3 times. I have a bad time when I'm reading these on my exams because I go in and the first 10 minutes I can't hear myself think. You know, the adrenaline's high. You're trying to get the exam started. You're in now this mode of taking the exam. You're hyped up and you're reading the question. You can't even understand what you just read. You have to read it 3 times. Okay, deep breaths. Let's figure it out. In the case of incorrectly wired network cables, a cable tester is going to be what you need. This is a relatively simple thing, a network cable tester. To be able to do this, it can find missing pins or crossed wires inside of a cable. You don't use it for some of the higher end testing. If you need to be able to look at crosstalk, if you need to be able to understand near end and far end crosstalk, understand where there might be a break in a cable and how far down the cable the break might be, then you would need something like a TDR, time domain reflectometer. You don't generally use a cable tester to do anything other than find cables that might be switched, pins that might be switched in the cable. You might be able to really look at these. It's very easy to use. You plug one in to one side. Usually there's a very large device here, a larger device, relatively speaking. Here's all the different pins that you might have in an RJ45 or an RJ11. This particular cable tester works with both. And then you have a little device you put on the other end. So you can go far across on the other side of the floor where the other end of the cable is, and you connect that up, and they're able to talk to each other, and you're able to see what those differences might be. Does it match? Does pin 1 go to pin 1? Does pin 2 go to pin 2? Is pin 3, it didn't light up. I don't have anything on pin 3. I must not have wired the end of this properly. Let's recrimp and see if I can get the 3rd wire to actually have continuity from one end to the other. If I then still have a problem, I might need to get out the time domain reflectometer, or TDR, to go all the way down the cable and see where does the break exist. You know, if it's halfway through the cable, we may have to replace the cable or get a different cable going through there to be able to work with those. And this is whenever I start working with this and start trying to figure out what is the best way to get this running. This is I really rely on all of my cable testing tools. I have a cable tester in my studio. Even though it's a relatively small studio with what I have here, it's important to have equipment like this because when you're trying to solve a problem, especially with a network, you need to solve the problem very quickly. You don't have a lot of time. There's people relying on you to get things running. So make sure you have a cable tester. I think I bought my cable tester. It was $40, $30. They have even less than that on eBay. I've seen them for $10 and $12 on Amazon. These are things that are very useful to have if you're doing anything with networking. They can also save you a lot of time to have it there as well. You know, one of the challenges with the A+ exam is not just the networking piece, but it's also that you have to know a lot about operating systems. You have to know about troubleshooting operating systems. You have to know how to react when a problem occurs, fixing an MBR, installing Windows, understanding how the network management piece operates, how to change network settings, how to send information from one operating system to another, how to configure home group, what a work group does, what a domain is. And one way to do this is to use something like Freestyle from GTS Learning. These are live labs that are set up all online. They have all the labs, all the operating systems, everything you would need to be able to do this. In fact, I've got the labs up right now. Here's a lab that I pulled up for system management utilities. It shows the lab diagram. There's 3 devices. Here's the devices on this side. They're already starting up there. And the labs themselves take you through exercise 1 using system information, got screenshots available for you, takes you exactly through this. All the operating systems are already configured. All of these labs are already built and ready to go. If you wanted to connect to a device and use it, well, then you can simply, let's move my lab over here. Let's connect to this Windows 7 device. And it's using HTML5, so it's using in a modern browser. You don't need any additional software. And here I am in my Windows 7 device. I'm on this device. Click Start, and in Search for Programs and Files text box, MS Info 32. So you can follow along MS Info 32. That's pretty quick response time too. So I'll click that, and it brings up this view. Step 2. In fact, you can see my screenshots are exactly the same. This is so easy to use. And if you think that you might want to be able to use this in your lab instead of setting up all of these separate systems yourself and building out all of these virtual machines yourself, you can have everything available online from the Freestyle Labs. These live labs are something that maybe you'd like to try it for an hour for free. How about that? 1 hour absolutely free. You can try it by going to this link, professormesser.com/freestyle labs. Also, you get a special price if you go through this link rather than going to the GTS Learning site because the folks at GTS Learning are so awesome. And I've worked with them for years. They are so great at building materials. They have books, they have A+ live labs. They've got a lot of things that can help you with going through your entire certification path. And this is one that I use all the time to build out screenshots and things that I'm using in my videos. I rely on GTS Learning to do that. So feel free to give them a shot. Go see out there and figure out the pieces with the live labs. Get your free hour and see if it's for you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you sure can't beat an hour for free. You can do that at professormesser.com/freestyle labs. And we thank GTS Learning for being a sponsor of what we do here at Messer Studios. Let's get another question on here as well. Yeah, those are VMs they're using online. It is all virtual machines that they've got set up. It's on the cloud. Nice setup that they have too. Let's now shift gears to mobile devices. We all have mobile devices, don't we? And one of them is one of the things we have to know for the A+ exam is troubleshooting mobile devices. And you can't really see all the question there because of my head, but it says, which of these would be the most likely reason for non-functioning GPS on a mobile device? My GPS isn't working. Why is it not working? I have to figure out all of these pieces. So you've got some options. Would it be interference from cordless phones? Would it be incompatibilities between GPS systems? Would it be the incorrect wireless key settings? Would it be the battery voltage is low? Or would you have a bad view of the sky? One of these would cause non-functioning GPS. In fact, it would be the most likely reason for non-functioning GPS. We use GPS for so much. On our mobile devices, we rely on it, obviously, for being able to understand where we are for location services. If we're using our maps and our driving directions, I rely on them heavily for those types of things. If you're in networking, you use GPS to set your clocks in your environment. Everything gets set exactly the same. And one standard clock that we all use is one that that we use from GPS. It's very simple to do that. We could use NTP. I use NTP on my systems here. I don't use GPS for that, but it's a very common thing to see in a very large data center, for example, is seeing this. That way you can sync up the times across data centers around the world, and you know everybody is synced up to a very, very tight time signal. GPS, very useful to use for that. So if you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com, figure out those pieces, see which one of these it would be. Troubleshooting mobile devices is a big part of the A+ exam. So we do have to know about these troubleshooting processes and going through this. This would be pretty important. One of the things you've noticed here in the chat room, they're saying, you know, are we doing a lot of 801 or 802? You notice I'm flipping back and forth. I'm doing one of each. So you're getting a little bit of everything in today's study group. Haven't gotten to the point where I'm separating out my study groups to 801 material and 802, but I might want to do that soon. We're getting to that point, I think, where it'd be nice to have a whole set of hour questions for 801 and a whole set of hour questions for 802. I think that would be very useful for those pieces. Let's see how we did on this one. Well, we're all over the place. 38%, not quite, even far less than half, said a bad view of the sky. The next are really sort of a tie for second between incompatibilities between GPS systems and incorrect wireless key settings. And really a tie also with the battery voltage is low. And then 12% said interference from cordless phones. There's a lot of things you have to worry about for GPS. But if GPS is just not functioning at all, that's more of a problem we need to worry about. Now, GPS is one where you would go into the mobile device itself and check the settings. For iOS and Android, you can go and look at the privacy or the location services, depending on the version of iOS that you have. Under Android, it's under settings and location. You may even want to configure what the location mode is. You don't really do that in iOS, but you certainly do that in Android. In iOS, it's more of a per application. You determine how something knows where you happen to be based on the location services. But the thing that really, really is the biggest problem you're going to run into with GPS is that you have to have a very good view of the sky. Because GPS is not a single signal from a single satellite. You have to have multiple satellites all locked into you. 4 is good, and more than 4 is so much better than that. And being able to see all of those satellites simultaneously is what's going to be able to triangulate you with your location and how far you are above sea level, in fact. So having the ability to see the sky is an incredibly important part of GPS. I mentioned timing all of your clocks in a data center, and usually a data center is in a bit of a bunker. So what you'll usually have is an antenna that's put outside just so you can receive signals from the GPS satellites, just so you can set times on your servers and have them all synchronized. Very, very common to see that. So if we look at our answers here, it's not interference from cordless phones. Cordless phones and the GPS signals are not working at the same frequencies, so that would not be it. It would not be incompatibilities between GPS systems because there's only one GPS system. So you only have one set of satellites, at least at the moment. There's not another one, at least not one we know of. We would not be incorrect wireless key settings. GPS does not use wireless key settings. It's not an encrypted communication between us and the GPS satellites. And it would not be that battery voltage is low because in this case, if battery voltage is low, everything is working or everything is not working. Your phone and mobile devices do not generally start powering things off as the battery gets low. It's usually an all or nothing. It is true, however, when a battery save mode is enabled, it might disable those, but that's not the most likely reason for non-functioning GPS on a mobile device. Again, there might be multiple answers in a question you might get on the exam, but only one is going to be the best answer or the most likely reason. So you have to think about that whenever you're trying to troubleshoot these pieces. If somebody's always having a non-functioning GPS, it's not always going to be because of a battery. And it'd be something very simple to look at. Almost always it's a bad view of the sky. And occasionally you can use GPS to be able to understand just how much there's a GPS monitoring. You can see how many satellites you're able to see. Usually that's in a more advanced troubleshooting process. Usually in Android, it's easy to find those things. So there is, that makes it very easy to be able to see that satellite and work with it. GPS, an important technology, and certainly one you'll need to know about for your A+ exam. All right, I've got I've got one. If we want to flip now over to the 801, I've got another question for you. And this question is more of a visual daily double, if you will. The question is, what are these interfaces? I should probably show you the interfaces first. What are these? What is that? What are these interfaces? And I've got a number of options for you. Are they eSATA, parallel, serial, SATA, PATA, PCI Express Power? Ooh, there's a lot of different options there. I gave you a bunch of options, not just giving you 4. I like to give you 5 or 6 options on a lot of my daily pop quiz questions. And that's because I want you to really think about what the answer might be. What are these interfaces? Don't answer in the chat room, but if you think you know, you can go to Socrative.com to the room named Professor Messer. If you like the study groups, we do study groups for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. We do one every month. And if you want to know what the schedule is, you can always go to ProfessorMesser.com/calendar or click the calendar link that's at the top of my website, and you can have that on your calendar. You can see the entire schedule. I try to book these out a couple of months in advance, so you can already see when the next A+ study group is for September. Can you believe that? September already. So let's see what these interfaces might be. It's got to be something. They're yellow. I don't think I have an answer yellow, though. That would probably give it away. What are these interfaces? These interfaces are yellow and squarish and very yellow. So let's see how we did with these. We've got a number of people who have answered this one, that have gone to the Socrative and answered this piece, and wow, we're all over the place. So, well, we got 2, I guess. Not really all over the place. We got 2 that are really the big answers. We've got 59% that have said SATA, and we have 23% that have said eSATA. And then we got single digits. The next highest one is PCI Express Power for these pieces. So it would be interesting to see what these particular interfaces are. These come directly off our motherboard. So here's an entire motherboard. And one of the things you can do for your A+, you're trying to figure out all these pieces of a motherboard, is you can go to a motherboard manufacturer's website, and they have these nice high-resolution pictures of motherboards. In fact, they probably look better than the one I have here because they'll show it from the top down. And you can start looking at that and say, well, that's where your memory would go. That's where the CPU goes. This is where I would put an PCI Express slot. This is a PCI Express slot. And you can start mapping it out. And if you aren't quite sure, you can download the manual for the motherboard. And every motherboard manual has a map of the motherboard, a little block diagram that shows you what the motherboard is. It's a nice sanity check. So you might want to think about doing that as you're studying for your A+ certification. So looking at this picture, if I look at, I can see there, in fact, these are yellow too. Way in the back right, you can see there is some of these types of interfaces on this particular device. These are, in fact, on this picture, I removed, in fact, I'm going to go back to, how can I go back one? There's usually something written on the motherboard itself that will tell you what these interfaces are. And you see I blacked them out. I've kind of smudged them in just so that you would not see what they really were, because if you look at a motherboard very closely, it even tells you right there on the interfaces what they are. This is SATA, SATA 2 port 0, SATA 2 port 1. So you get to see what those particular SATA information is. Those are SATA interfaces, SATA. This is our serial ATA storage interface that you would use to connect a hard drive or an SSD. It is one that is commonly used today on all modern motherboards now for the last number of years. Probably not the last 10 years, but certainly very common today to see on motherboards. Whenever we start working with storage like this, and what's nice about these is they're very small relative to the older parallel ATA, or what we just used to call ATA, for those pieces. They're not eSATA because eSATA is external SATA, and it is a completely different interface type. In fact, I should be able to pull up an eSATA connection while we're here thinking about it. You can have a look at those while I start poking around on my hard drive here. eSATA, very different in what it looks like because it needs to be. Underneath the surface, electrically, it is really a very similar communication. But there needs to be a differentiation between SATA and eSATA, and this is a very good way to do it. In fact, I have an eSATA connection. Let's see if I can show this. Here we go. So here's eSATA. You can see the interface is a little bit different than the SATA. It's designed to be external, and it still is SATA, the electrical signals that are being sent back and forth, but the interface itself is a little bit different. You can see it's sort of in the middle. It's got keys on both sides and the bottom. It's not that same L shape for data that you see elsewhere. It's very different than DisplayPort, very different than USB, certainly very different than FireWire. You can see SATA has more of this L key associated with it. Very different. It's kind of similar in size, but it's a very different how it's keyed. You can't take an eSATA cable, plug it into a SATA connection, or vice versa. Simply will not work. So something to keep in mind when you're working with those technologies and how they might operate. Very nice to have that, though. The eSATA is very useful to have there. Why are they yellow? Because the manufacturer here used yellow. I've seen eSATA be different colors as well. Different manufacturers use different colors for the motherboard. Just depends on the one you get. You can't really rely on colors to be able to do that, but it's one of those things that can become in very handy. We're getting now to the top of the hour, but I've got another question for you. And I know one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get is I want more questions on these. So let's do one more before we go to phone calls. And here is the question. This one, again, a networking question. And the question is, what is the minimum category of cable required to support 100 base TX? So this is when we have to know two different things, it seems. You have to know cable categories, and you have to know what the heck 100 base TX happens to be. Who knows? What in the world might that be? Well, let's have a look at 100 base TX and what's there. So let's have a look at Category 3, Category 5, Category 5E, Category 6, Category 6A, or Category 7. Got a choice to go. I just stuck them in order. So which one would be the minimum category required to support 100 base TX? Stop with your Googling, because that's an easy Google. You should know it, top of your head. You'll need to know this for your exam. 100 base TX, go to Socrative.com to the Professor Messer room. I'm sorry, those of you that are watching on the replay for this, you won't be able to do this live, but if any of you, both live or on the replay, would like to get a continuing education unit, you can always go to the top of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link at the top. You can click there, tell me that this is the August 2015 A+ study group, give me your name, and give me the code word 100 base TX, and you'll be able to get an hour credit for your CEUs. You obviously can only get a certain number of those hour credit CEUs to apply towards any upgrade, 3-year upgrade, but it gives you a good way to do that. And it works whether you're watching this live or on the replay. So don't think because you're on the replay you can't get that. You absolutely can. So let's see how we did with this answer of 100 base TX. Let's click the how did we do? How did we do? Wow, we're all over the place again, but you can see we have a nice graph there. Got a nice even distribution with an alpha value of 0.10. There's a Category 3, 9%. 5E was 25%. Category 5 was 57%. And then Category 6, 8%, 1% for 6A. Nobody said Category 7, which is not a real category, but it sort of is. It's one that we've now sort of created, but it's not a standard yet, that kind of thing. But let's see what the answer might be. We're really dealing and specifically asking about 100 base TX. So the minimum category required to support 100 base TX. So here's a chart of what these categories might be. So we need to see, and in fact, I put them in order here, Category 3, 5, 5E, 6, 6A, and 7. And I've put in what the generally used cable categories or the cable standards are, the networking standards are for the cable standards. So we can look here in Category 5 is the first one where we were able to use 100 megabit Ethernet using a standard called 100 base TX. You technically could even do gig Ethernet over this. It was supported in Category 5, but there was quite a bit of crosstalk and interference if it wasn't done exactly right. And that's why we came out with the 5E, because it enhanced the Category 5 and allowed us to have a much more trouble-free 1000 base TX experience, gig experience. But the very first category, the lowest category that you can find for 100 base TX, which is 100 megabit Ethernet, is Category 5. And it's not unusual to go into a wiring plant that's been there for about 10 years and find Category 5 cable that was run, and you're running 100 megabit and gigabit over your old Category 5. As long as it's in spec, you'll be in good shape. And as long as you've got your device set up to be able to run that 100 megabit or gigabit connection and your cabling can support that, it'll work fine over that Category 5. So if we look at the answers there, you can see that those of you that answered B, Category 5, you would have got those absolutely correct with that piece. So those of you, the 58% of you that said Category 5, would be absolutely correct. Well, we've come to the top of the hour. We've gotten through a lot of questions today. I'm really, really pleased with how everyone did as well. I think we learned something today, and some of you already knew some of the questions I'm going to ask. I'm just going to have to keep making these harder and harder and harder with those pieces. If you're planning to watch the next study group, we've already scheduled it for September the 9th. We do these on Wednesdays now, so we're able to go through. If you ever want to know when the next study group is going to be, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/calendar and see when our A+, our Network Plus, our Security Plus, or anything else we're doing that might be a live event associated with this. Remember that I'm sticking around for the next hour to take your phone calls. We'll get the phone lines up and running already. But for those of you that you're done with lunch, you have to go, I can appreciate that. But you can always follow what's going on Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. You'll notice in the afternoons now, I'm sending out an Instagram picture where you have to figure out what is the thing that I'm sending out. Sometimes I'll send an A+ question, a Network Plus question. So you may want to follow me on Twitter or follow me on Instagram just so you're able to get those. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. They're just kind of fun. There's not a multiple choice. I'm just throwing a picture out and see if you know what that picture happens to be. And I have technology in here all the time I like to put on my Instagram as well. I'm doing more and more with that. My course notes, again, remember you can learn about those and help support the website at ProfessorMesser.com/A+CN. My thanks again to GTS Learning and your absolutely free hour of labs you can find at ProfessorMesser.com/Freestyle Labs. Of course, check the calendar. I do this every month for A+, for Network Plus, for Security Plus. Very simple. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us on the next one as well. I want to thank everyone for attending. Thanks for answering the questions. Feel free to stick around for the second hour. Otherwise, we'll see you next month at the study group. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I don't put the answers in the Instagram, so you got to figure that out. Or just ask me. If you really, really want to know, you can always send me a note on that. To get that piece. Well, let's get the phone lines up and running because of bottom. So it would be nice to have a show. I have 800 numbers available. I guess I could put up the 800 number. There we go. 855-785-RJ45. That's 855-785-7545. It's not quite up yet because I have to now type this and talk to all of you at the same time. And I have to be able to put this in and hear these noises and call this number and be able to find and the number I have here.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome for me calling that.
Please enter your show number.
I don't remember my show number, but I'll see if this is it. Make sure that
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
my PIN number. Does that bother everyone as much as it bothers me?
You are now in the host
Okay.
room to manage
So
your
now,
call.
thanks everyone. Probably folks are already calling in. Pardon me. Okay, I need to drink some of my beverage before we take our first call. Feel free to call in the studio lines. We have some folks already calling in from the 401 area code. I don't have a call screener, so I just kind of picked these up. I'll say it's the 401 area code. It might be you or it might not. You'll hear a beeping noise. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
My name is Ivan.
Hi, Ivan. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
So I am a IT intern and students And my plans are to get the A plus certification soon.
Good idea.
And what would be the any advice for me regarding the A plus and the study groups and all of that? I just have like 1 month studying for the A plus
Okay.
certification.
Yeah, you had me up until you said you have 1 month, because I was just about to answer and say, well, the A plus is a very big exam, and then you say, well, I need to get it in 1 month. Is there a time frame based on the internship that you're trying to get the certification done? They lose you, Ivan? Are you there? The one thing that I really focus on when I'm dealing with doing things in a very short period of time, getting your A plus in a month is doable. It depends on how much experience you have in the past. It depends also on how much you're able to study. Obviously, the A plus exam is obviously 2 different certifications, and it's a very broad exam. It doesn't go super deep on any particular topic, but it is very broad. You have to know about hardware. You have to understand mobile devices and printers and operating systems and troubleshooting. And there is a little bit of everything. There's networking, there's security. So you have to now learn a lot. And if you're doing it, you can absolutely do it in a very short period of time. And I think my recommendation for you is really the same as my recommendation for anyone else. Make sure you have a good book. Make sure you download the exam objectives, because you can use those as a master checklist. You can check off everything you know, and you'll know exactly where you need to study. Use my videos. They are numbered exactly the same numbering system as CompTIA's exam objectives, which are not the most conducive for learning, which is why I usually tell people, get a book, get the GTS Learning book, go out to Amazon and grab a book. I've got links on my website to study materials that will take you to the GTS Learning site. Those books are really useful because they're more of a learning mechanism, and the videos can help supplement that as well. I think that being able to also do some Q&A can be very, very useful. And if you're doing this in a month, you're going to need to try to find as much Q&A as possible. I think the Exam Cram Practice Questions book, this is an exam cram book, but it's called Exam Cram Practice Questions. And it's a book that is nothing but questions. I think there are 3 separate exams inside of it. So that may be another useful thing that can help supplement. So you're going to have to dive into it if you're planning to do this in a very short period of time. Is that kind of the idea? Ivan is doing it in that 1 month time frame?
Yes. Pretty much I'm just I'm trying to study for the A plus and take the test in about like 5 months.
Okay.
Those are my plans.
I think that if that's the case, you get those materials, you're going to be in good shape. Get a good book, watch the videos, get a nice Q&A guide. And if you think you need additional study materials above that, you might want to think of the live labs or think of the course notes. But as long as you have that core piece and just use the exam objectives as your master checklist, you're going to be fine.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks for watching.
You're welcome.
There's a lot when you get into working with the A plus, a lot of different things you can choose from. But the one thing, and I say this all the time, and I just don't say it enough because it keeps coming up, download the exam objectives. If you know everything on the exam objectives, you will pass your exam. There's really no question. They're the most comprehensive exam objectives that you will find. Let's go to the 914 area code. Are you there? Caller, what's your name? Caller. Oh, I hear somebody. Are you there, caller? I hear me. And I hear you're there, and you can hear me, and I hear me. Are you there, caller? Can you say something? Nope. I'm going to put you back in the queue. I do have plans to get a call screener, by the way, just so all of you are familiar with that. Let's go back to the next caller at the 617 area code. Are you there, caller?
I am.
Oh, there you are.
How
What's
are
your
you?
name?
My name is Fred.
Hey, Fred. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
The question I have is I'm planning on getting into IT. So I've been studying to get my certification in the 801. 1st. I plan on taking. So I was planning on taking this exam in probably like the beginning of like October.
Sure. What's your question?
Oh, so would you recommend that it's possible for me like to do pretty well on exam, knowing that I just like started like this month?
What type of experience do you have already in working with hardware, networks, and those types of things from the exam objectives? Are you starting from the beginning? Have you worked with these things before?
Yeah, I have like little knowledge of all this stuff.
Okay. So that's always a good start, because usually I would say the average for most people to take a single A+ exam, and this may be on the larger, more conservative end, is probably about 3 months. But if you already know about computers, you've worked with some of the hardware before, you've worked with networks a bit, you've got at least some familiarity of the technology, you can decrease that time frame quite a bit. It's August now. You've got the last half of August, all of September, and into October. That's a perfectly reasonable time frame to get one of those exams covered. And I think if you allocate 2 to 3 months for each exam and you go through the exam objectives and you can check those off, then you should be fine. I think that's a perfectly good time frame. Do you know how much you'll be able to study, or is there a certain time that's driving, a certain thing that's driving the time frame for October?
Most likely I plan on studying like probably 2 to 3 hours a day, every single day, so I can like absorb the material and like actually like know it.
That's a pretty aggressive time frame. And if you've got all the right things, get a good book, watch the videos, and then you've got the other things you might want to choose from. As I was mentioning to Ivan earlier, you'll be in great shape, and you'll be able to start checking off things on that exam objective list, and you'll feel very comfortable about walking in to take the exam because you'll know you've gone through the entire list and be able to check off most of those.
Got it.
Good luck with that. Let us know how it goes, and
Thank you.
I'll be waiting to get your email in October timeframe.
Thank you very much. I've also really appreciate you putting up all these videos and having all these live chats every single month, because they've been really helping.
Glad to hear it. Happy to do it. I love doing it, and I couldn't do it without your support as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. There is the exam objectives. Get those exam objectives. Really, really useful. I want to go back to, I think, my screening call I had there. We'll go to 530 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, sir.
Hey, there he is. What's your name?
My name is Patrick.
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for calling.
So my question is, I've been working, doing a little bit of IT stuff here and there. I'm very comfortable with pretty much everything on the 801. I'm taking it Friday, but I am struggling with IP addressing and subnetting. I feel like when I sit down to study, it's just a big blur of numbers and addresses, and I'm just trying to see if there's a way I could break this down so that I could get a better handle on it.
Well, you certainly are doing it right if you found that subnetting is confusing. You're doing it exactly the way everyone else does it, because it is something that's not incredibly obvious whenever you start working with the subnetting side. Now, you said you're taking the A+ certification?
Yeah, I'm taking the 801 this Friday.
So one of the good things about this, if there is a good thing that you could say about subnetting, is you don't have to know a lot of details about subnetting for the A+ 801 certification exam. In fact, the A+ exam in general doesn't require that you know how to, for instance, calculate the total subnets. You don't have to calculate how many networks or how many nodes happen to be on a single subnet if you are given an IP address and a subnet mask. That is well outside the scope of the A+ exam. Okay. That is all Network Plus type stuff and afterwards. But one of the things you do have to know about subnetting is really an overview of them. One of the important things to understand are the address ranges. There is, for instance, on the exam, you have to know what the default subnet classes are, the class A, B, and C, and understand what those things are. You have to know what things like CIDR block notation happens to be with those things. And there's a list of private addresses, in fact, that are associated with those CIDR block addresses. So you have to know what those are as well. But that's kind of it. You're kind of at the end of it when you get to that point of knowing those pieces. Once you know those, you're in pretty good shape. You don't have to get into a lot of detailed calculations about what those are. In fact, I think it's a single video I have that talks about IP subnets on the 801, and it's kind of done. You don't have to know much more than that.
Okay.
So don't worry about that piece. Go to your exam objectives, check off the things you know about IP subnetting. One of the things I tell people, and this is generally on the Network Plus exam, but I think it applies to the A Plus as well, and certainly the 801 exam, subnetting is this tiny little sliver of total knowledge that you will need to pass this exam. In fact, even on the Network Plus, you might get one question about subnetting. You might get two, and getting more than that is incredibly unusual for this Network Plus. On the A Plus, you have so much content for the 801 exam because you're not dealing just with networking. You're dealing with all of those other different categories of things as well. You have to go through and understand the hardware. You have to know all the pieces about the other parts of networking. You have to go through laptops and printers and operational procedures. So don't take this the wrong way, but if you get wrapped around the axle on any particular topic, maybe the best strategy is just to ignore it and learn everything else instead of wasting your time you're banging your head against the wall. I'm never going to get this. And people have told me I've spent days trying to learn subnets for the A Plus. And I've said, don't spend hours and then just push it aside. There's so much more on the A Plus exam, on the 801 exam. Go do that thing, because that's really your best use of your time. Because if you can answer those questions, you won't have to worry about the subnetting piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as I browse through the course notes, I'm hitting everything. Then I hit that half page on addressing in subnets, and I just go, whoa. Yeah. So that's reassuring. I appreciate it, and I really appreciate all the content you put out for everyone.
My pleasure. And I will also tell you, and this is something that's not unusual with subnetting, is you kind of have to look at what people will do, like many different sources. Read a book, watch another set of videos on subnetting and another set of videos on subnetting, and maybe read some other web pages on subnetting. And then all of a sudden it clicks and people go, oh, okay, I got it. That was it. So this may not be as bad as you think it is. It may just be fear of the unknown, which is something I struggle with all the time. Like, oh, I don't know if I know that. And then you learn it like that was it. Right. That was how I worried about this. That wasn't too hard. So you may be right about there, and you'll be able to scoop that and have it done and be ready for the networking part of the A Plus. I think you're going to do fine.
Right. This is my first exam, so I think I'm hyping myself up a lot, but I know the rest of the content, so I'm confident now, and I appreciate the pep talk.
Yeah, you're going to do fine. Go through your list, check off everything on your exam objectives. If you're checking off 95% of that, you're going to pass your exam, Patrick. No problems.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely. Take care. It's a real question. Like, when do I go take this exam? How do I know I'm ready to take my A+ exam? It's a common question I get. You're ready to take it if you can go through that exam objective and check off those things, and you're going to really be in good shape to have that piece there. So that's what I want to be able to do, is that piece of it. There's a lot of people calling it, so stay on the line. I see that you're there. I'm working on getting those things ready to go with those pieces. And let's go to another set of calls with this. I've got a call coming from the 301 area. This may be the person I was talking to before. I'm clicking things on my side, so we're going to see how well my clicking goes on this. The 301 area code, are you there, caller?
Yes, hello, Professor.
Hey, what's your name?
My name is Marcelo. First of all, I'm calling you to thank you for everything you've done, and I love watching your videos, and you really, really helped me a lot. I just passed like a month ago the 801
great.
test.
Congratulations.
If without watching your videos, I wouldn't pass it really. I've even, read a lot of books and all that, but your videos they're really right on the money, and I thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. It's very motivational. Makes me want to make more videos.
Yeah. Thank you for you be out there for all of us that we're trying to get that certification, and actually I'm trying to get my 802 by this August the 24th, and I've been studying hard watching your videos almost every day really, and And I don't have any questions other than to tell you that thank you very much for everything you've done for us.
Absolutely. And thank you for calling and telling me about that. Congratulations on the 801. Let me know how you do in the 802 as well.
Definitely I will. Then after that is my next step. As you know, it's going to be the network, which is I'm going to keep watching your videos, and then the security. So
good for
thank you very much.
Good for you. And if I can ask, Marcelo, what is your end goal with these certifications? What is it that you're working towards?
I really want to get into engineering, network engineering. I love working with machines.
Nice.
And since I just got here, and then, I was doing different kind of jobs before, and then just one day, and I just, I happened to have a computer, started fixing it, and then, I just got the hang of it, and then I quit my restaurant job, and then I got hired, and I helped this, junior help this department, which is I'm learning a lot of stuff.
Nice.
So I'm really in day-to-day basis, doing a lot of stuff. But really, the certification is the number one for me, because everything that you're going to apply, they're always asking for the certifications, which is the money's out there and jobs out there, and then watching your videos and getting me certified. That's my goal, Professor.
This is what I did. I started and right out of school. In school, I was working effectively at the help desk. It was in operations for mainframe.
Wow.
I started literally delivering cables, printer cables around South Florida, and then got into an enterprise help desk at an insurance company, and found networking and did network systems engineering. And that took me to manufacturers of network systems engineering and eventually into security. I think it's a fantastic path to go, and there's always something to learn. I love it.
It is really, I wish I would have done it like 15 years ago. I always, honestly, I mean, no jobs is different, but I was working different jobs that I'll never feel okay with it. And then now that I'm working on this job, I'm pretty happy, and it's everyday learning experience. And I say to myself, it's time. It's time for me to move on, and this is the right path.
That's what it's all about.
My certifications.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a good path to go. Thanks, Marcelo. Appreciate the call.
Great, good man. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Let's go to the next call. Thanks for holding on, everyone. I see a number of you have been there now for double-digit minutes. I appreciate that. We'll go to one at 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hey, my name's Connor.
Hey, Connor. Thanks for calling.
I was just wanting to, because I've just started to watch your videos, and just like everyone else, time frames about like a month or two until I'm going to take my actual exam.
It's familiar, yes.
The first one. And I was wondering, because the time I'm taking or watching your videos and studying, I feel like I'm taking a very slow paced. What do you think is the fastest way to kind of absorb the information, get everything in, and make sure you have everything you need by the time?
Well, if you're doing a slow pace, then you're in the same type of study schedule that I am, because I've done in the last year, I've probably only done about 2 certification exams. I did one that was a Palo Alto Networks security certification exam, and I did one that was a Cisco certification exam. It takes me forever to get any studying done. And part of that is there's, life is going on around me. There's different things happening in the world that I have responsibility for. But I also, when I'm sitting down, I have to concentrate really on getting a block of time, sitting down, having nothing around me. I'm somebody that really needs to focus in and put blinders on and really look at the material to really understand it. And then what I realize is I've forgotten it by the next day, and I have to kind of summarize what I did previously so that I can keep studying before. I don't know that that's a bad thing, because I passed my certification exams. I'm able to learn the material. I'm able to go out other places in Wikipedia or search for things that I didn't know that perhaps my book doesn't know very well. I don't know that a slow go on this is necessarily a bad thing, as long as you have all the right tools, as long as you have the exam objectives, you've got a good book, you've got the videos, you've given yourself things that help you study the best. I found for me, Q&A was okay. Looking through Q&A and doing sample tests was all right for me, and I feel like I got more from reading a book. So for me, I adjusted my studying so I had an extra book to read, and I just read 2 books and then kind of went through some questions so I would get accustomed to what might be asked of me on the exam. But everybody's going to be a little bit different. Some people love watching the videos. Some people can't watch the videos. That's fine. Find the thing that works for you, kind of focus on that, and maybe even double up on that particular thing that works for you the best.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks for calling.
No problem. Bye.
There is, I just, everybody does a little bit differently. You know, somebody was telling me the other day, boy, I didn't get anything out of your videos. Like, well, that's okay. That's fine. But you watch them. So I'm fine with that. Let's go to the 386 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hi, my name is Ash. How are you doing?
Hey, Ash. Thanks for calling.
I have a quick question. Could you please explain a little bit more about the continuing education that is going on with the CompTIA? Yeah, I did my Network Plus exam like in January, and I'm studying for A Plus because my teacher told me that it would be better to have both certificates at the same time.
Okay.
And then I realized this continuing education is going on, and I'm not sure if there is enough understandable information out there, so it would be easy for me to understand what's going on with this.
Well, the reason that you say there's not enough information and that it's confusing is because there's not enough information and it's confusing. You are not at all different than anybody else who's looked at this. Now, I have the extreme advantage, if you will, of having to really dive into CompTIA's continuing education program and figure it out. And there are many nuances and many gotchas and many things that can actually help you with these pieces. So, Ash, did you say that you had taken the Network Plus already?
Yes, I have the Network Plus already.
And now you're going back, you're going to fill in with the A Plus exam.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the way that it works with CompTIA. What it is, when you get in a particular certification, that certification has to be renewed in 3 years. There's a group of CompTIA certifications that require this 3-year renewal. Not all CompTIA certifications require this, but the popular ones certainly do. This is an international standard. It's not just CompTIA that does it, but it's something that they have to do to be properly accredited and internationally accredited. And this international accreditation is one that is used primarily by very large organizations and governments to make sure that the people who are working for those organizations know what they're supposed to know. So I guess if you look at the reasons for the recertification process, there's kind of a good reason that you might want to recertify. There is a list of those certifications on the CompTIA website that will tell you the list of the certifications that have to be renewed, and they give you a list. If you just Google CompTIA continuing education, you will get to their continuing education page. So let's go into how it is renewed. It says you can renew in 4 easy steps. It's really 4 easy steps. It's a little bit more complicated than this because there's time frames involved, but I'll give you kind of the summary. You are able to renew by accumulating continuing education units. You can do many different things to be able to accumulate these units. And on the CompTIA website, there is a list of things that you can do to accumulate those units, those activities. And they will tell you all of the things you're able to do. They've got a document, a PDF file that displays exactly what you can do. Earn a CompTIA certification, earn a non-CompTIA certification, teach a course, create instructional materials, complete an exam development workshop. I mean, it's got a huge list of things. Attend a webinar like you're doing right now. And attending a webinar will give you 1 CEU per hour, and you can get a maximum number. If you're renewing the Network Plus, you can get 6 of those particular kinds of CEUs in a 3-year period to renew. Now, the challenge is each exam requires that you renew a certain number. If you have the Network Plus, you have to get 30 CEUs in 3 years to renew. If you have an A Plus, you need 20. If you have Security Plus, you need 50. So you have a number you have to shoot for. Here's where it gets complicated, is that first you have all of those things you can do to renew your certification. You can take CompTIA exams to renew your certification. If you take a higher level CompTIA certification, it will automatically renew your existing lower level CompTIA certification. So this won't work for you quite the same way because you've already taken Network Plus, and CompTIA considers the A Plus to be a lower level certification, but it will still give you points. The A Plus exam will give you taking that and passing it gives you, I think, 20 points. And if you got 20 CEUs, so you can apply those 20 CEUs towards your Network Plus certification. So you only now have to come up with 10. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, that makes sense. So is this something that we have to enroll in it? Because when I was reading the whole thing, it says that you have to pay like an annual fee of something, and then after that you can submit these like webinars credits.
Well,
that's why it's confusing.
It is, and that really adds to the confusion, because if you take some certification exams to renew, then you don't have to pay anything. If you take other certifications exams to renew, you do have to pay something. So here's the way it works. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you're taking a higher level CompTIA exam to renew your lower level CompTIA exam, you don't have to give any money, provide any annual maintenance, or pay anything extra. Your older CompTIA certification or lower level CompTIA certification will renew automatically without you having to pay anything. So if you have your A+ and you take a Network Plus, then it renews everything. You have a Network Plus exam. If you were to take a Network Plus certification, if you were to take Security Plus, it would automatically renew your Network Plus and you wouldn't have to pay anything because you're taking a CompTIA certification. If you're taking a certification from another company, you have to pay those annual maintenance fees. So let's do a Network Plus. I have on my screen a list here. So you can renew your Network Plus by taking one of the Aruba certifications, Checkpoint certifications, Cisco certifications. These are all 30 CEUs. CompTIA's certification, obviously, CWNP, eCouncil, EMC, NCASE, GIAC, HP, IBM, and the list goes on. And Microsoft. You can take a bunch of Microsoft certification exams. You take and pass your Microsoft Enterprise Administrator on Windows Server 2008, and that gives you 30 CEUs, and that would renew your certification. But because you're taking it from Microsoft and not from CompTIA, you have to pay the maintenance fee to CompTIA to be able to do that.
Oh, I see.
Oh, now,
okay.
If you're also accumulating CEUs by doing that list of things we talked about earlier, attending a webinar, writing or attending a class, writing a blog entry, attending a conference, you also have to pay maintenance fees. The only way you get out of paying maintenance fees is if you take a higher level CompTIA certification and pass it.
Oh, okay. That explains a lot. Thank you so much. It was great. And also thank you for your videos. I've passing my Network Plus with your videos only. It was great. I do have experience in networks. It's just not saying that these only videos, but you are a great help. Thank you so much again.
Thanks, Ash. Appreciate it. If you have other questions, just let us know.
Okay, great.
Take care. That's it's a minefield. How in the world do you figure those things out? I have no idea. Let's keep the party going. We're at the 202 area code. Are you there, caller?
If you have other questions, just let us know.
Are you listening to me?
Okay, great.
Are you there, caller? Caller. Pick up the phone, caller.
It's a minefield.
How in the world do you figure those things out? I'm going to put you back in the queue, caller. I'm so sorry. I hate doing that. We'll put you back in the queue. I'll come back to you in a moment. Let's go to the 949 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I am.
Oh, what's your name?
My name is David.
Hello, David. Thanks for calling.
No problem, Mike. First of all, thank you for all you do, your videos, your live seminars. They are a big help to me.
Quite welcome.
My exam is tomorrow. So
okay.
Yeah, just viewing your online seminar here. You got any tips for me for my exam? I'm taking the 801.
It's the same one I give kind of at the beginning of the study process, and it's one I really focus people on when they're in the last week of their study process. It's all about the exam objectives. It really is. And I say this over and over, and I really haven't shown it on the screen, but I'm going to pull up the A+ exam objectives that I have here, just so people understand, and we'll kind of talk about this as we go through this. The objectives are so comprehensive. They have these are the 801 objectives I'm showing on the screen. I know you can't see this very well, but I'll talk to it. I'm just going to scroll down to where they start. So Section 1 with PC hardware, Section 1.1 asks you to configure and apply BIOS settings. You need to be able to install firmware upgrades and flash the BIOS. You need to understand BIOS component information such as RAM, hard drives, optical drives, CPUs. You have to understand BIOS configuration such as the boot sequence, enabling and disabling devices, date and time, clock speeds, virtualization support, and understanding BIOS security such as passwords, drive encryption, TPM, and LoJack. Use built-in diagnostics. There's monitoring. That is all just the first section of many sections of the first domain that extends into, on the 801, domains for hardware, networking, laptops, printers, and operational procedures. There is no better resource for anyone to be able to understand what you need to know prior to walking into the exam than what's in this set of exam objectives. It is comprehensive. It is extensive. It is detailed. It gives you everything you need to know. So you're probably doing this already. And if others that are listening are not, that's what you should do is go. I print mine out and I physically check them off on the screen. I've gotten to where I do now. I use annotation in my PDF reader and I check them off in my PDF reader by just clicking on them and highlighting them. So I know that particular one. CompTIA is unique in this because if you go to Microsoft or you go to Cisco or you go to VMware or you go anywhere else, their exam objectives are miserable compared to this. There's one line and that's it. They don't tell you specifics of what you need to know. So before you go in to take your exam, go through this list, check off. And if you can tell somebody what that particular bullet means, you can check it off and go to the next one. And when you go through this, you'll at least have an idea of where your weak spots are. So when you're doing that last minute cram session, you'll know exactly where to focus your efforts. Let's go to the part of the book that talks about BIOS monitoring because I don't know what they're talking about with that piece. And now you can just follow along and fill in the blanks on the exam objectives. That, when you're short of time and you're in that last week, that's one of the best things that you can do.
All right. Thank you. I actually do have one more question for you specifically.
Yeah.
I am confused on the RAM speeds, like the PC and the DDR numbers.
Yep.
Is there a way to convert between that, or do I just have to memorize the specific correspondence between them?
CompTIA has kind of confused the issue over the years, and they've confused it a bit because they talk a little bit about it in the exam objectives, but they don't go into a lot of detail, which makes me believe that I don't need to know a lot of detail, except sample questions that they have had on their exam in the past have talked specifically about memory speeds. And so it has led everybody to believe that, if they're talking about it on the website in sample questions, maybe I also need to know about doing this as well. And on my videos, I go into the intricate detail dealing with I/O bus speeds, memory bus speeds. And I think ultimately where the exam has gone is I think they want you to be able to convert between a DDR specification and a PC specification. So in effect, you're really just multiplying by 8. So it's a much simpler path than what they have done in the past. And if I look at the exam objectives, they don't really go into a lot of details about memory speed. In fact, they really don't talk about memory speeds at all. And what people have said, although it is a violation of your exam objectives to discuss what is on the exam, people will discuss it. And the word on the street seems to be that the emphasis in memory speeds is not what we have all been led to believe through the years. And that if you just really understand the relationship between DDR speed versus PC speed, because that's really what you're going to see when you're buying these things and looking at the specifications, you should be fine for your exam. I don't know that that's entirely the case, but that seems to be the feel that I'm getting by what I'm reading.
All right, then.
I know that that's kind of a wishy-washy answer, and I don't know if that really gives you exactly what you need to know to get through that piece of the exam, but I think that does. I think my answer is going to be similar to the one I gave earlier. Don't spend huge amounts of time on that. If you get any questions at all, it might be one, and you could be spending all this time learning other parts of the exam objectives and answering those questions correct+
Okay. Yeah, and there will be performance-based questions on the 801 exam, correct?
There are performance-based questions on the A+ exam, the Network Plus, the Security Plus, the CASP exam, all the way through. Both the 801 and the 802 have performance-based questions. There is a video on YouTube that CompTIA put out that describes what these performance-based questions are, and it's effectively fill in the blank, matching, putting things in an order from highest to lowest or lowest to highest, or they could ask you like command line questions, but those are on the 802. You don't have any command line questions on the 801. So you at least don't have to worry so much about typing things at a command line. It's really more of understanding how to put things in a certain order. Maybe they give you, I would see an easy one, give you a list of interfaces like the one I did today, give you 4 pictures, and then you have to match the pictures with the name. There's a performance-based question I just came up with at the top of my head. That's an easy one. It kind of makes sense based on the exam objectives. If you know the exam objectives, you'll do fine with the performance-based questions.
All right, then. Thank you.
Good luck, David. Let us know how it goes.
For sure, man. Thanks.
Take care. That's exciting, isn't it? Ready to take the exam? Go in there. Let's go back to 202. Maybe 202's listening in now. Are you there, caller? 202.
Hello.
Hey, what's your name?
My name is Kwashi.
Hey, Kwashi. Thanks for calling.
How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you, sir. What can we do for you?
Okay. Before I dive into the discussion, I just want to say that you said a few minutes ago that somebody said he didn't get anything from your videos. Honestly speaking,
yes.
If somebody follow your videos and can't get anything from it, then that person is not really meant for IT.
Maybe.
Because your videos, they kind of sum up everything that a beginner or somebody who has been in IT field for quite some time needs to know in order to keep up to date. So I really want to thank you for putting up these videos. I wish more people could come to know this great resource that you have on YouTube that is really helping a lot of people.
Thank you, Kwashi. And people say things when you're on the internet and you're putting things out there at any level. People tend to say things that can be abrasive or abrupt. But I've been married a very long time, and there's nothing anybody on the internet can tell me that I haven't heard already. So we're good along those lines. And I appreciate the kind words as well. What can I do for you today?
Yes, I don't really have a question for you, but I just want to share my experience with other people who are already struggling to get their A+. I began studying for my A+ May last year, 2014. I was a security officer, and I decided to change the course of my life. And I dived into the studying for the A+, and I came across your channel online. It really helped me a lot. Between May of 2014 and August 2015, I have my A+, my Net+, my Security+, and I just got the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner.
Nice.
So to those of my friends out there who want to study, get into IT, all you need to do is to set up enough time to study. It really matters how much time you put in. You get the results of how much time you put in to study for your exams. And I just want to say that I went for a job interview, and the one way that I prepared for that job interview was I followed your videos on YouTube, the A+, the Net+, and the Security+ videos. And I went for the interview. They didn't take me for that job, but I did extremely well.
Okay.
The guy who ended up getting that job was probably better than me. But I tell you that I only produced everything that I got from your videos. And I really want to thank you so much.
And you're quite welcome. I think it's an important consideration that you have to have a goal in mind. You have to decide what you want to be able to do with this. People ask me all the time, what is the value in getting this particular certification, whatever it happens to be? And I tell them the value of the certification isn't based on what I'm telling you. It's based on what you're trying to do with it. You should have a goal in mind and decide what you want to do with those pieces of that knowledge you're taking. And also depends on the things that you're surrounding the certification with. Nothing is standalone when you walk into an interview. No one thing is able to say this one thing got you the job. You need experience. You need knowledge, maybe a formal degree. Every employer is looking for different things. And I think it's important to add not just all of those other pieces to your resume, but have those certifications in your pocket as well, so that the people who are hiring know that you know this knowledge, that you've gone through the process of getting the certification, and that you're dedicated to learning those particular tasks, because they're going to have many more things for you to learn when you get into that position.
Right, and I really want to thank you so much. And just one last thing that I want to say that it's not really related to the discussion for today. Sure. It is about the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner. This is a very great certificate. I mean, it took me 4 months to get this certificate, and it is extremely tough. I don't really understand why CompTIA is not doing a great job promoting this certificate out there. I mean, it is a very great. It covers a lot. The questions are really tough, and when I look at jobs out there, they don't really mention the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner.
They don't. You're right.
Certificate that the candidate needs to have.
Yeah.
But CompTIA needs to do a great job promoting the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner.
I think they should. I'm getting more and more questions to me asking when I'm going to create material for that particular exam. So I know there's an uptick in interest, but it seems to be a very slow grade. And I think you're right. CompTIA is not doing a lot to promote it. They're not. I don't know if they're really in the marketing side of this. You don't see a lot of marketing of their A+ or Network Plus or Security Plus. They tend to market reverse. They tend to go to the universities and the companies and market to them to ask them to have people to have the certification. And I think it's a slower process and it has to trickle down to where we are so that we can see the job description that says, oh, I need to have CASP. And I think also the security certification market is a tough one. There are and I have a security background, so I know the CISSP is what people kind of put at the top, and then everything else has to compare to that. So I think CompTIA has more work to do and things that they need to do to promote it. But I agree. I looked through the exam objectives, and it's a very comprehensive exam. It's spot on with the things you need to know from a security perspective. And if you're getting into security, especially if you have a networking background, you're going to need to know that material.
Right, and one last thing before I leave is that for those of my friends out there who are looking to get into networking or network security or cyber security, do yourself a favor. Start from A+, Net+, Security Plus. Everything builds up. When I was studying for my Security Plus exams, it took me 2 months to study and pass my Security Plus exams because most of the stuff I already saw it when I was studying for my A+,
right,
and my Net+.
Yep.
So it really builds up. It's like studying for a Security Plus exams without doing the A+ and the Net+ is like starting to count from 3, 4, 5 without ever starting from 1 and 2. That's the way I look at it. I mean, it really helped me a lot when I was studying for my Security Plus. The knowledge that I got from the A+ and the Net+, I mean, it took me less than 60 days, and I had my Security Plus. Not to talk of the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner.
Nice.
When I was studying for my CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner, it took me just 90 days. 90 days. And I had it because I had all this experience from my A+, my Net+, and my Security Plus. So to those of my friends out there who are looking to get into, let's say, cybersecurity, do yourself a favor. Start from the A+, go to Net+, then go to Security Plus. There's no way you can know how to do network security if you don't understand how computers network together.
That's great advice.
That's the way I look at it.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Kwashi, for calling, and best luck. Congratulations with those certifications as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take care. He's right. It all builds on each other. You don't get into security by starting with security. You get into security by starting at the beginning and working your way in. Well, let's go to the 602 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Are you there, caller?
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Mohammed.
Hey, Mohammed. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Okay, first of all, I really appreciate your videos.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just started studying for the A+, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. First, I started with watching Mr. Mike Myers. I'm not sure he have another channel on YouTube. And
he has some videos, sure.
Watching the website and your channel. My question is, for example, Mr. Myers saying that you have to put yourself under pressure, like you have to schedule your exam, 2 months, 3 months in advance, whatever works for you.
Not a bad strategy, sure. So it's one way to do it.
I'm not really sure if that's a good idea because I go to school as well. So,
it's one of those that's more of a personal preference. I think a lot of people do that. I tend to I'm very good at driving myself and setting a calendar and understanding when I'm going to study every day and set myself up a regimen so that I know that in a couple of months I'm going to be ready to take this exam. But I probably in 2 or 3 months away can't set a date on it quite yet. Some people, though, don't have a way to do that, or they need to make it more of a game. And setting a date in the future and saying, all right, that's my day, isn't a bad idea. And the reality is, I don't think he mentions this, the reality is you can change the date. You can reschedule 24 hours before. So if you do get up to that date and you realize, wow, I've not been studying very well, I need to push this out. You always could do that. So you do have an out. But some people like to have that extra push to get them down the road. Not a bad idea.
Okay. Thank you. The other question is, I mean, I got 2 books plus, the internet.
Yep.
I got Mike Myers books from Amazon. Like I have a PDF file.
Yep.
I read on my Kindle. And
Very
the other
popular.
book that I have, I think it's Pearson. It's SRI Certificate Guide. I think the author is Mark Edward.
Yep.
And Scott.
Yeah, those are
Miller.
popular books. Both of those are very popular books.
Yeah. So I got those books. I like to have a hard copy. That's why I got the SRI Certificate Guide, and I have like the but anything else like out there, I like to have like different books from different authors, so I could have like different aspects.
I'm agree. I agree. I'm the same way. And I think getting the exam objectives is an important piece. Your books have the exam objectives in them, so make sure you read through those pieces. The Mike Myers books is a popular book. For those of you that are watching, and for those of you that sent me emails, I'm not Mike Myers. Mike Myers is not me. I don't have a book. I don't write books. I do videos. Sometimes there's confusion in the world around that pieces. And I know you're not making that mistake, but just for the people that are watching, I'd love to answer questions for you when you send me questions about the book, except I've never written a book on A+. So send those over to Mike, though. He loves to get those questions. There are multiple books is my strategy as well. I'm comfortable when I have multiple books, and I think you've got 2 pretty good ones there. People should go to Amazon, read the books, because you can read a little bit of the book online with Amazon to kind of get a feel for the voice of the book, to understand how they're presenting some of that information. Some books appeal to me much better than others. Some books are very long and drawn out and go into very extreme detail about the materials that you need to know. Other books give you just what you need to know without going deeper into the technologies behind them. Both of those have advantages and disadvantages associated with them, but you should have, in my mind, everybody should have at least 2 books to go with. I think the first book I ever read for A+ was one of these bigger books, and I read through it and I thought, wow, this is going to be a tough exam. Then I grabbed the next book and I thought, well, this wasn't so hard at all. So it was a very different book that presented information a very different way. I think you're doing the right things. Get a couple of books, watch videos online, maybe get a Q&A book or some online Q&A to go through what sample questions might be. That's a nice follow-up, I think, to the books and the videos.
Okay, just one last question.
Sure.
So, do you recommend that to watch the video like one by one, or sometimes I tend to get distracted and I go to like the pop quiz?
Yep.
Because I did work a little bit like with computers and repairs and stuff, and I have a little knowledge. So when I see like the question, I try to answer it. And, if I don't get it correct, like if I'm not positive 100%, I would watch the video, like on the website or YouTube. Or so your recommendation, I tend to jump from like video to video, but sometimes I like to like follow like from the start and go to the next video and go to the next.
It's something I'm working on as well. I need to do a better job also at giving you sort of a preview of what you need to know for this particular video. I keep the videos very short, so there's very specific, targeted information you're going to learn in a particular video. And then afterwards, there needs to be some an analysis of that. How well did I know that information? So those are things I'm working on my side to make these courses a little bit better. I also have the transcripts there as well. If you're watching on my website, I have the entire transcript written out on the page so you can read through it. So that, did I catch everything? Do I know everything in here? Okay, I'm good. Let me go to the next video. And that's one of the ways I'm trying to make it a little bit easier for folks, not just the ones that are need some help with hearing, or that perhaps English isn't their first language, but reading through it. If you already know, do I need to watch it or not? That may be a good way to do it, because you can read through it very quickly. I think you're doing the right thing. I'm trying to put more detailed information, but one thing you'll notice is that I number the videos to match the exam objectives. So if you're going through the exam objectives and you get to section 1.4 of the 801 that says install and configure expansion cards, you may already know, oh, I don't know that very well. Let me watch all the videos in section 1.4. That might help you as well.
Okay, Professor, thank you so much. You did a fantastic job. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mohammed. I really appreciate it. Thanks. You're quite welcome as well. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
There is callers that are still on here. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. I'm going to keep taking calls because apparently I can still keep talking, which doesn't always happen. So let's go to the 773 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes. Hi, my name is Rick.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah. Hi, Professor. Yeah, so thanks for the videos. Thanks for all the material. But, okay, so I have some basic questions first.
Hit me.
Actually, what is the difference between getting a degree in computer science and just getting a couple, maybe like 3 or 4 certifications? Like, is there differences in the skill set that you acquire going the different routes?
There is a huge and remarkable difference between those two things. It's not even comparable, really. Those are two very different things. And generally, when I'm talking to people about what their strategy should be for getting their next job or even their first job out of school, it really involves many different things. I think certifications are an important piece of this so that you can add that to the list of things that you already have. Those things would be things like education. And a formal education is not a replacement for certifications, and certifications are not replacements for formal education. Those are two very different things. A computer science certificate or computer science degree is something where you've either spent 2 or 4 years. It's been a very focused set of classes. You've gone through some very detailed knowledge of different mechanisms in business. You've learned things about programming and development. You've learned things about management information. You've learned also things that are outside the scope of computers, because there is a huge emphasis, certainly in the United States and in other countries as well, to have a very solid liberal arts knowledge. So understanding arts and music and math and history is also an important piece of this. So whenever somebody says, I'm trying to decide between the two, I usually say you're comparing the wrong things. Both of those things are important. They solve and allow you to do different things. But don't also look at things with that eye, because a certification is something that provides you with a short-term knowledge. If you're getting a knowledge in Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows Vista, whatever it happens to be, those operating systems will be around for 5 years, 10 years, and maybe that's it. That knowledge is not going to be very useful to you. But the things that you learn when you get a formal degree is knowledge that you're able to take with you throughout your entire career. In fact, throughout your entire life. And you don't want to short yourself, because you may want to start by doing development work, and you get in that, you learn a little bit of programming, you get a certification in programming, you get that first job in programming. Then when you're ready to move up in the organization, they're going to look at what your formal education is. And they're going to want to know, do you have an AA degree? Do you have a BS degree? Do you have a master's degree? And what is that in? Because that will help us understand how you'll be a better manager. Whether that's right or wrong is not really the question. That's what they're looking for. So don't try to think that there's a way to shortcut that either, which would be great if there was, but there's not. Having that formal degree is a pretty powerful thing to have in your back pocket, even if you don't think it's something that you'll use now, and you won't, because I was there. I went to college, and I'm in college like, when am I ever going to use this? How is this ever going to be? Can I please get out of here and get a job already and start making money in the real world where I learn real things? But the reality is that a lot of the things that I learned in business school, in liberal arts, getting my AA has helped me throughout my entire career. So I don't ever want someone to try to make a decision between those two. You should try to make it a way that you can get both of those things, because ultimately that's what's going to help you the most when you try to get that job.
Okay, so you're saying that there's actually a difference in economically and as far as getting a better job title, but what about the actual knowledge that you acquire? You're saying there's a difference with that as well.
There is. And it's sort of a broad scope. It's not just an economic difference between those two, but because they're doing different things. The certification might get you in the door somewhere. It might get you an interview. And in that interview, you may be just the person they're looking for, even though you don't have a formal degree. In my last job, I worked 6.5 years with someone who didn't have a college degree. He got a high school degree, went to college, didn't ever get a formal degree in college, and was incredibly successful in what he did, and now has his own businesses, and he's a fantastic person. And, all of those things that have nothing to do with whether he got a degree or not back in the day. But even he thinks if he was going to move up into management, they're probably going to want a degree from me. And he felt that may have been holding him back from that perspective. So there is a bit of an economic piece of that. I was sitting around with the Mrs. Professor Messer last night talking about college degrees. We were talking about politics and what the different people that are running for president in the United States are looking for, and the things they're looking to do with education, and that migrated into a conversation about colleges and universities. And I've got kids I have one kid who's in college and two more that will be going there someday, I hope. And we have this challenge in this country of huge amounts of debt associated with going to school, and people going to school and getting degrees that perhaps are loading them up with debt that were not the best economic reason. Some people are fantastic musicians and they go get a doctorate in music, which I think is great for them, but now they have an enormous amount of student loans, and it's difficult to get rid of the student loans if you have a doctorate in music versus having a doctorate in computer science. So those decisions are different as well, and they affect you not just immediately out of school economically, but they also affect what you're able to do when you're getting a job. I'm kind of talking a lot about just things that have come to mind, and I apologize for the long droning on, but that's sort of my perspective and how I look at those pieces. They're not comparable, and it's kind of hard to fit them together in a way where you could compare them.
So just as far as knowledge, like the gentleman that was speaking earlier about like the higher level certifications that you can get.
Yep.
Is there like a similar category that you can put, like network security, for instance, with some high level computer science classes? I'm not just speaking from as I said, like a job perspective, but an actual knowledge perspective.
Sure. I'm seeing these things merge together a bit. When I was in school, it only seemed like a couple of years ago, but it was a little more than that. There was not a lot of personal computers in the world. There was no internet to speak of. And what you were learning in what was called then the Management Information System degree, and there was also computer science degrees too, was primarily programming on a mainframe. Because that was the IT job at the time. You were a programmer and you figured out how to make this program work, and that's what you did. But I'm seeing that in community colleges and in universities, they're starting to get more classes that focus on the things you need to know to manage a Cisco router and switch network. And in fact, the local community college here in Tallahassee, where we are headquartered, they will accept your A+ certification, your Network Plus certification, and your Security Plus certification for credit. You'll walk in and you already have credit. You don't have to take that class because you have your A+ certification. That counts for their introduction to computing class, and now you've got 3 credits that you didn't have to pay for. So I'm seeing a lot more of that happening. It is awesome. I think that's fantastic. And I'm seeing more of it at higher levels too. There's a lot more Cisco routing and switching. But of course, computer science gets into a lot more detail about what's happening behind the scenes. How are these routers and switches doing this? How can I write my own ASICs? How can I program these things myself? It gets into a lot of the detail. So you really do have to look at, am I trying to manage the network, or am I trying to build network equipment? Am I going to move out to Silicon Valley and work for one of these big companies building the hardware, or am I going to work for a company where I'm going to manage the network and all the hardware that's there? So there's nuances associated with that as well.
Okay.
Well, I hope
Thanks for that very in-depth answer.
That was a very in-depth.
Trying to keep up, but
sorry for talking so much, but hopefully it's given you some perspective into my little mindset anyway.
All right.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate the call.
Number 2. Do you mind if I get one more?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Professor.
I won't talk as much this time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's say after 2 to 3 years, you get 3 or 4 certifications. After 2 to 3 years, what do you think a person's pay grade would be?
It's hard to tell. It's a very common question because every organization does things differently, and there are some pretty significant differences between vertical markets. And by that, I mean the transportation vertical is different than healthcare, is different than government, is different than private industry, is different than manufacturing. So all of those have very different perspectives of what you should be paid, because ultimately the IT department, or the section that handles the technology, provides a different value to the company. So I look, for example, at some of the things I see. Generally, we don't have a lot of money for our government. Our state and local government, or even our federal government, runs on a very tight set of budgets. So you don't get paid a huge amount of money with government. But the other side of that is you have a lot of different kinds of equipment to work with, and usually they're very big networks, and you can learn a lot in a very short period of time. So there's trade-offs with that. I look at other organizations like one that might make cars. If you're a car company, your job is to make automobiles, and the network is an important part of that, certainly an increasingly important part of that, but ultimately you're making cars. So the IT department is not the focus of that company. It's the thing that helps the company run. And that's probably the vast majority of companies, the way it works. And then you have organizations that sell technology. Somebody has to make the router and sell it to the end user. Somebody has to make the switches and the firewalls and the proxies and all of those things that make the load balancers, the virtualization software. There has to be somebody who's smart enough to be able to take the knowledge of that company and explain it to someone else. And usually those systems engineers are paid at the higher end of the salary range, because they're the ones that are closer to the product. As the closer you get to the manufacturing of the product, the more money there is to pay people. And ultimately, that's your job. Your job is to be a smart person who's able to take a very complex idea and present it to somebody in a way that's going to solve the problems that they have. And if you have that special set of skills, you're probably worth a few extra dollars an hour to be able to do something like that. So I can't give you an exact number, but you should be able to, there are some very good salary surveys out there. And I want to say it was Network World, but they're not really around much anymore. But Google, if you would, salary surveys in IT. There's some for 2015 that are out there, and they will give you an idea, because they break it out by some of these verticals, and you'll be able to understand what the differences are between them, and get an idea of, in fact, of where people are paid more money. And I realize it's nice to be paid more, but I will tell you that I've taken some jobs where I've been paid very little for what I was compared to elsewhere in the industry, but it was an opportunity where I was able to learn a huge amount of information in a very short period of time. And sometimes that's a good investment. So don't be blinded so much by dollar figures, although it's absolutely important. And I'm not saying that it's not, because it is, but also keep in mind what your end goal is and how you want to get there. We very often are looking just at the next job. You really should be looking at the next 10 years, the next 15 years. What do I want to do? Do I want to work for that big company? Do I want to work at home? Do I want to build my own product? Do I want to start my own company? You need to figure that piece out, because everything you do going forward is going to work towards that ultimate goal.
Okay, so basically, just to summarize, you're saying that to get involved with the best company possible, but also to have the skill set specific for what they need, and then you would be an asset to their company, and that would help you get ahead.
It's a trade-off, because every company knows that you're not going to be around for 20 years. It's a trade-off. They want to be able to provide you with things that are going to be good for you, and then you want to be able, of course, to be paid in a way that's going to make sense for the job you're doing. Sometimes there's a trade-off there. If they've got more toys and things available and you're going to learn a lot more, maybe you're willing to take a little bit less money. Maybe it's the best of both worlds, and they've got a lot of toys and they'll pay you a lot of money, because that happens in the IT industry as well. You just got to hunt around and find the thing that works for you. And ultimately, you got to do what you enjoy, because you don't want to come to work every day hating what you do and the people you work with. So it's never one specific thing. It's always a combination, isn't it?
Exactly.
Very good,
well,
Rick.
thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for calling.
All right, bye.
I appreciate the callers that have held on. We're going to take one more. I think my voice is probably going to go out. We have an odd number that has a 2310. Hey, how are you, caller? What's your name?
Oh, I'm so glad that was the last one.
Thanks for holding.
My name is Darlene.
Hey, Darlene. Thanks.
I am very excited about receiving my CompTIA A+. I passed the first part 801.
Excellent.
On the first try, and then I just recently, about 2 months ago, I took the 802. I really wasn't satisfied. I didn't pass the second part, and I'm trying to figure out where can I get the stimulation, because the 801, I had very good, I did Mike Myers. Then I went on YouTube, and I saw some very good stimulations, and it was such a big help. And I just went in there with the 801, and I felt real confident, and I did really well. But the 802, I was a little apprehensive, because I didn't get stimulation, and there's none on YouTube. And I was trying to go to Pearson, but Pearson is very expensive, and they don't separate 801 and 802. So I wanted to find out where can I go for just 802 stimulation, because when I went for the exam, I knew that the stimulation would be important because of the command line.
Right.
And I felt confident about it, but I saw that not having that stimulation did make a difference.
The performance-based questions can be a challenge on the 802 because of that. And that's I think it's a similar story that I hear for specifically the performance-based questions. The 802 is so broad. It goes into operating systems, and it's more about understanding how something works and troubleshooting it, which is very different than the 801, which seemed to be rote memorization. This is a VGA port. This is an HDMI port. This is a network interface. And so you're right. There's not a lot out there. And you do also have to be careful, because some of the information on the internet, they are taking directly from the exam and violating the exam objectives or the exam agreement that people took. And now you're seeing information you shouldn't be seeing. And that's one of the reasons I look at the GTS Learning has their Freestyle Live Labs that are just 802. So there's a good example of a product that's only focused on the 802. So that may be something to look at. You can at least use it for an hour and see if that's something that might help. And I think that's the 802 exam itself is so broad, and there's so many command lines that you could learn. It's a huge amount to memorize. You have to know all of the operating system commands, moving around, copying files, the robocopy, the Xcopy, the copy. Then you also have to know all the networking things, the ping, the trace route, all of those pieces associated with the net command.
I got a very good lesson from your videos on that. That simplified that a lot. But I still think I need the stimulation to get more practice with it.
It's all about hands-on. You're absolutely right.
So the 802 is so practical, and I think the stimulation will let me know where I stand with it. because I'm very good with the questions, the word questions. Because Myers says, if you can get 90%, and I've been getting 90% on the questions, and on the questions that I exam Compass, doing very well on that. But it's that practical stimulation that I need.
Yep.
And I need to know where I can get that.
I see a couple of ways to do it. So one of the challenges you have is to be able to do this properly for the 802 exam. You need Windows XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7. So you need at least those 3 operating systems, or have access to those operating systems, maybe in a virtual machine.
I've done what's it called again? Where you can put all 3
like VirtualBox or VMware or something.
I have virtual.
Great.
Yeah.
So you've already got kind of the tools you need. You've got your toolbox of things. And I think there's a couple of ways to do it. The relatively inexpensive way is that many books in the book itself at the end of the chapters will have labs that you can do. And that may be a good way to do some hands-on. I think it's all about hands-on and getting that hands-on perspective.
Yeah, and that was the unfortunate thing about Myers' book. It didn't have the stimulation. You had to go back and purchase that.
The GTS Learning books have.
I'm feeling like I'm paying more for what I don't need, because so many of them combine 801 and 802, and I'm like, I don't need 801. I've already passed that. I want to just focus on 802 only.
The GTS Learning books don't separate 801 and 802, but they do have labs after each chapter, and a number of books do have labs after a chapter. So you could find in almost all books will cross-reference the exam objectives versus what's in the chapter you're going to read. So that helps.
I had some chapters I had to review for 802.
Right.
Which they were in there as 801/802. So I had to review those for 802 too.
So I think that's one good place to go, is go to the books that do have labs in them and do the labs that are based on the 802 topics. The other thing you could do is maybe look at the GTS Learning live labs, or there's many other similar things that are out there. They are only focused on 802. The entire set of labs is all about the 220 802. As I mentioned, you get an hour of that for free, and you get a year's access for $99. So that may be another option. And there are other products like that out there. And I realize some of them combine the 801 and 802, but there are others out there that do provide just 802. And I think the third option might be to look at the videos and just do more hands-on. Find what's in the exam objectives. Here's a command called copy. Let me find different ways that I can use the copy command. Let me look up on the internet how people are using it, and going through that piece as well. I think those are 3 different strategies, and they might all to some degree provide you with a way to get more hands-on, so you'll be ready for performance-based questions on the 802.
Yes. Okay. So
good luck with that.
Live labs.
Yep.
And where else you say? Books that have labs at the bottom.
Books have labs in them. Yep. Or just going through the exam objectives, finding the command for trace route, and then running some trace routes and getting a feel for what you would expect to see, and really understanding what it's showing you on the screen. You should be able to do that with your existing labs. Yep.
Yeah, I did that on
Perfect.
Okay.
And give that a shot. I think one of those, or even a combination of all 3, should give you the hands-on you need to get through the 802.
Okay. Yeah, because, boy, I tell you, those labs that I found on YouTube for the 801 was so helpful. I mean, I was just able to go in there and drag this and put this here. And then I guess it also was part of having the knowledge, because, I have a degree in television production and have over 20 years of audiovisual technician, and been working in AV. So maybe that was a upper hand for me too.
Yeah, you know the equipment. You know what a BNC connector is. You know how it plugs in. You know how to work those pieces. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, very good. Best of luck with you, Darlene. Try some of those, or a combination of all 3. Let us know how it goes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
That brings us to the end. No more calls and I apologize. Some of you were on, we were not able to get to you, and you fell off. I apologize. We weren't able to do that. We'll get with you, or send me a note. You can always call this phone number if you're watching the replay. Call the phone number afterwards, leave a voicemail, because it will leave a voicemail right in the room, and I can either play that next time or get back with you on an answer to the question that you might have. Keep those short, and we'll be able to go through those in the next study group. Remember that the next study group, I think I have it right here. I have to remember myself. The next study group, September the 9th. We have the same thing. I'll do Q&A. We'll open up the phone lines and do all of those pieces. We hope to see you back here. I want to thank everyone for joining. We had a great turnout this month. I'll get the replay online shortly. I'm going to edit it and post it back to YouTube so you'll be able to watch it in 1080p HD and have all the pieces there that you need to see. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next weekend. Is our next Wednesday is our Network Plus study group, and we'll either see you there or we'll see you next month on the A Plus study group. Thanks everyone. See you then.